So, have you ever really thought about where your favorite anime comes from? I mean, its deep, deep origins? Well, today we're going to peel back the layers on that. We're going on a visual journey through the incredible and surprisingly long history of anime and manga.
All right, let me ask you something. When you think of the very beginning of anime, what's the first year that pops into your head?
For a lot of people, it's probably the 1960s, right? You picture iconic characters like Astro Boy zipping across your TV screen for the first time. It feels like the right answer. But what if I told you the real story, the true root of it all, started centuries before that? We're talking ancient scrolls and woodblock prints. Yeah, seriously. Okay, let's get into this. So, to start, we're not heading to a modern animation studio in Tokyo. Nope, we're going all the way back to 12th century Japan. What's so cool about this is you can actually trace a line directly from these super old scrolls, which had, frogs and rabbits wrestling like people, all the way to the word manga. These illustrated books, the kiyoshi, they were basically the comic books of their day. And then the legendary artist Hokusai comes along and drops his Hokusai manga, and the name just sticks. And get this, the name manga itself tells you everything you need to know about its spirit. It literally means whimsical pictures, just carefree, random drawings. That simple, playful idea is the seed for what would become this massive, global storytelling empire. Kind of blows your mind, right? Okay, let's jump forward in time a bit. We're heading to the early 20th century, to the exact moment these still pictures first started to move. So in 1917, you have these three guys who we now call the fathers of anime. They didn't even know each other, they were all working independently, but they all started releasing the first professional animations in Japanese movie theaters. We're talking tiny teams, barely any resources, but they lit the spark that would eventually become the entire industry. And this really shows you just how different things were. Forget what you know about anime today. Back then, we're talking about short, silent films less than 5 minutes long, and they were drawn with chalk on a blackboard, one painstaking frame at a time. They even had a live narrator in the theater just to explain what was happening on screen. Now, the next few decades were complicated. The art form was about to grow up fast, but it did so in the shadow of war, co-opted for a much more serious purpose. Suddenly, with all this government and military money pouring in, animation studios had budgets they could have only dreamed of. But there was a catch. They had to shift from making fun little stories to producing propaganda films. Their creative freedom was pretty much gone. And this whole era kind of culminates in 1945 with the release of a huge milestone, Japan's very first feature-length animated film. Now, this film, it was a propaganda piece, right? But it had this completely unexpected side effect. It deeply moved a young manga artist watching in the audience, so much so that it inspired him to become an animator. And that artist's name? Osamu Tezuka, a name that would change everything. Right here, this is a critical turning point in our whole story. It's about how one single artist, inspired in the ruins of a war, basically went on to build the entire modern anime industry as we know it. Tezuka was a huge fan of Walt Disney, and he brought that cinematic feeling, like dynamic camera angles, to animation. He created that iconic visual style, with the big, expressive eyes. But most importantly, he developed a revolutionary new way to produce animation that made it way cheaper and faster. Meanwhile, don't forget to subscribe and like the video, please. To hit the crazy deadlines and tiny budgets of television, he came up with something called limited animation. And you can see the tricks right here. It was a total game changer. By using fewer frames and reusing animation cells, he sacrificed a little bit of smoothness for incredible efficiency. This is what made weekly anime shows possible for the very first time. And the effect was, well, it was an explosion. In 1963, his show Astro Boy hit the airwaves. And just like that, Tezuka yanked anime out of niche movie theaters and beamed it directly into millions of living rooms. Its place in pop culture was changed forever. So, Tezuka's Revolution basically kicked the doors wide open. What followed was a golden age for anime in the 1980s, and from there, the beginning of its total global takeover. And you can really see how it all unfolded. The 70s gave us giant robots, the whole mecha genre, which totally reflected a post-war Japan obsessed with technology. Then the 80s, The Golden Age brought these epic space stories and crazy action series, matching the country's economic boom. And then the 90s. That's when anime just conquered the world, defining everything from magical girls to those deep psychological shows that a whole new generation connected with. And this whole global success story, it started way earlier than you might think. Astro Boy was a massive hit in America. So big, in fact, that it got foreign investors interested. It even led to NBC helping to fund the very first color anime TV series, Kimba the White Lion, pretty much just for American viewers. By the late 90s, the art form had earned so much respect that even a titan like Disney was partnering with the legendary studio Ghibli. They were investing millions to help bring these incredible films to audiences all over the world. That's when you know you've made it. So, after this whole trip through centuries of art and history, what's the big takeaway here? What does it all mean? It's really a story about incredible evolution, about how a few whimsical sketches on a scroll, through constant innovation and the vision of people like Tezuka, turned into this complex, sophisticated, global powerhouse for storytelling. If there's one thing this history shows us, it's that this art form is always changing, always adapting, which leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. With powerful new tools like AI on the horizon, what's the next chapter for this 800-year-old story? Thanks for watching.